All right, Molo Sanbonani, hello, how's it? Good evening, goeienaand, people. Shalom. Welcome to another episode of the Big Daddy Liberty Show. It is a Wednesday evening, 7:30 p.m. I put away the Siddur. Evening prayers are done. And you know what time it is. Time to put on that Big Daddy Liberty face and chat to you, you beautiful, beautiful South Africans, you, the faith, flag, family, and freedom type South African. Welcome to it. This is the BDL show every Wednesday at 7:30. Do yourself and me, more importantly, a massive favor by hitting that like button. Do it right now. Do that. Hit it. Just take a moment, breathe in, breathe out, and then just hit that like button, because you know what it is. It will help save one African child from dying from starvation. Never said that child wasn't me. Remember. Welcome to it once again. If you're joining us, as I always say, guys, hit that like button. It is going to be a bumper show tonight as we, in the next 30 minutes, unpack what is becoming a growing problem. And it's a problem we're going to focus on in greater detail. Tonight, I'm going to fire off the first shot, so to speak, excuse the pun, in addressing this particular problem that we're facing, which is our South African police service ever increasingly resorting to criminality itself. The question I asked in the descriptor of this video is, are police arming crooks? That's the question we asked, as I sort of looked like I've frozen on the screen there. Oh, there I am. I'm back. So we're going to have that conversation tonight, and a conversation with Gideon Joubert, who is, of course, the founder and the head honcho over at Paratus.info. He is my go-to guy for all things guns, self-defense, and firearms-related matters. I'm going to bring him on in a moment. I just want to do a quick shout-out. Now, this is just for full disclosure, because I know how YouTube is. This is not a paid promotion. I'm not paid by any of these people to do this, but I did want to show you guys these Jones. These are delicious. I'm telling you now, if you are on the low carb mission and lifestyle as I am, and seeing that weight slowly trickling off, I'm telling you now, especially if you're a faster, this guy is delicious because it means in your eating window, in my case, in my eating window, I have one of these to quite literally snack on after a meal. They're super delicious, l'chaim, on that particular track. So shout out to you guys at Carb Smart for these. These are really awesome. Keep them coming. Please do not make them disappear. Right, with that being said, the show does look a little glitchy. Hey guys, in the comment section, just the moderators, please. Just the moderators. Let me know if the feed is a bit glitchy, because it's freezing on my side. And if it is, I might as well switch to 4G. So just the moderators, please. Let me know if the show is glitchy or not. But if it isn't, let me keep it going and bring my guest on. He is, of course, the host of Paratus.info. If you are looking for anything gun, self-defense, and the law around that's related, you must go to Paratus.info. I read a very nice piece recently as I begin the work of deciding what firearm for self-defense or pistol I'll be purchasing. So there he is. Caught him sipping on a delicious beverage right there. Gideon Joubert, dude, good evening. Welcome to the BDL show.
Sister, evening to the viewers, evening to everybody else, the moderators, who I think I've become very well acquainted with over the last few months, being on and off. And it's great being back in a very interesting topic of discussion this evening, and one that's very close to my heart. So cheers, l'chaim.
Absolutely. And indeed, as we toast to what is a relatively wonderful evening, it's not lost on me, unfortunately, given the topic that we're going to discuss here, that there are guns circulating right now in the hands of criminals who should not have these firearms. And sadly, and more scarily, a lot of those firearms are actually self-loading, fully automatic rifles, having been lost, Gideon, in inverted commas, from the Norwood police station. Gideon, firstly, set the scene for us. What's going on? What do we hear? What do we find out?
So it's actually worse than that. So these particular guns, well, not all of them, but of the 158 that went walkabout. No, let's actually call it what it is. Let's not use euphemistic language here. They didn't go walkabout. Okay, these guns were purposely removed from the SAP 13 evidence locker, which is coincidentally the exact same storage facility that every single person that hands their guns in under an amnesty, whether or not they're attempting to license that firearm to their name again using the amnesty process, or whether or not they use the amnesty to hand that particular firearm in for destruction, all those guns get locked in the SAP 13 storage facility. It is an evidence locker, but that's also where firearms and other pieces of evidence get stored. Now, 158 guns they did not go missing. I mean, hate's a strong word. I despise this trend in journalism where we say 158 firearms went missing. Missing infers that there was an administrative error or something, and that the gun was subsequently found, okay, without having really left SAPS custody. These guns were actively removed by malicious actors, individuals, from that SAP 13 locker, and they were sold to criminals for the enrichment of the corrupt police officials who broke their oath to office and betrayed the citizens of the Republic of South Africa through that act, and in essence, not only endangered the lives of other South Africans, but actually directly resulted in their colleagues being murdered by the exact people whom they sold these guns to. So we need to be very, very clear on what happened here. So of these 158 guns, some were found on a private property in Johannesburg a few years ago. They were found alongside explosives, the sort of equipment you typically see in the hands of Zama-Zamas and CIT heist folks. Okay. The original property, the owners of the property where these firearms and explosives were found were subsequently never convicted of any wrongdoing. Probably there is a chance they may not have been involved in anything dodgy at all. However, these guns were then locked up at that SAP 13 evidence locker at the Norwood police station, and among them were fully automatic AK type firearms. And I say AK type because you get AK-47s, AKMs, you get the Chinese Type 56. All these things can be considered an AK type without, in essence, being an AK-47. So I'm stressing the splitting hairs about it purely for technical correctness. But AK type guns, R series, which is R4, R5 fully automatic assault rifles, and R1 battle rifles, which are also fully automatic. This was taken to custody, and these guns were sold to criminals who, in at least one incident, used them to murder a policeman, which then led to one of these guns in being found in the hands of one of the cop killers. And it circled back all the way to Norwood police station, where the clerk in charge of the SAP 13 locker was either a warrant officer or a sergeant, went missing from work, booked into a hotel or a motel, and then killed themselves, took their own life. The station commander has allegedly resigned, and it's a sad indictment of the police service. But when a station commander resigns, it means that there's so much dirt that they have on that particular individual that becomes untenable for them to do what dirty cops usually do, and just stick it out and refuse to budge. So there's a lot of dodgy things happening there. And ironically enough, on that same weekend of this find, the Cape Argus ran an article about the guns to gangs scandal plaguing the Cape has just escalated. In fact, we have corrupt policemen just recirculating guns to gangsters. I mean, they arrest them, they take the guns off them, the gangsters go to court. Those guns taken off those gangsters are then just sold back to them or sold to other gangs. And it's like a revolving door of illicit arms trade being done by men and women wearing blue uniforms, wearing SAPS badges and with SAPS appointment certificates, who are supposed to serve and protect the public, right? And that's where we're at. It's that catastrophic.
I mean, just the picture.
That's why I drink so much, essentially.
And I don't blame you, because the picture you're painting here, Gideon, is a situation which is there is a wanton disregard, a complete disregard for effectively. Now, bear in mind, there's two issues at play here. I'm going to have us unpack them in a moment. But in the one hand, a wanton disregard for the duty that SAPS has given itself effectively through legislation, which is to quote unquote control firearms in the country. Now, whether we agree or disagree with that duty that it's given itself, I happen to disagree, but that's another issue for another day. It's a duty that they have, number one. Number two, that same police organization with a particular AssHat of a political leader, a one Bheki Cele, will then, in the same breath, with a forked tongue, proceed to ignore this crisis that you've painted, which stems from the police, and argue brazenly, and argue that actually it is you, dear citizen, who is the source of the proliferation of firearms, and dangerous firearms at that. Again, I shouldn't use that misnomer, dangerous firearms. Let me rather say firearms in the hands of very dangerous criminals. And suggested, no, you're the reason that it's happening, dear South African. Can you please, Gideon, dismantle both of these particular misnomers?
So firstly, I was involved in a project to try and quantify police firearm losses versus civilian firearm losses a couple of years ago for a particular public official who wanted to know sort of what the score is, because he heard a rumor that up to 7 to 8 times more guns per capita are lost by the police service than by civilians. And I went and I dug into the statistics a bit, and looking at best case versus worst case. Best case scenario, best case, the police lose 2 to 3 times as many guns per capita as civilians do. Worst case scenario, they lose up to 16 times as much per capita as ordinary civilians do. Which means if you average them out in the middle, the claim that it's 7 to 8 times as much per capita is, it does hold water. But it's very hypothetical. But still, the data is horrific. The thing that people forget is that when parastatals are irresponsible with their firearm ownership, we're talking about Eskom Praza all having their own security divisions that they issue gun to their security officers to, National Parks Board, Metro Police and Traffic Police have their guns licensed under Section 20 of the Firearms Control Act. So when their guns go missing, they are counted as civilian losses. When security companies lose guns, they're counted as civilian losses. So all these juristic persons losing guns either through negligence or through the conduct of their duties are then unfairly attributed as ordinary, like natural persons owning guns, like people like you and me. We would then be blamed as being irresponsible, and the statistics of civilian losses are artificially colossally inflated by this. Whilst at the same time, we cannot ignore the fact that the SAPS are terrible custodians of their own firearms. And part of this issue, as of June or July 2020, the service provider that essentially sort of licensed the software that the police use to run their FPS, their firearm permit system, which in real time tracks where the 500,000 odd police guns are at any given time, like who books them out, who has possession of them. They failed to pay that service provider, and after a huge back and forth via the courts, the service provider shut that system down, which means that the police, as last time I checked, keep track of their firearms via a carbon paper, physical written out copy at station level. The implication thereof is it is impossible, without performing incredibly labor-intensive physical audits, to actually determine who, where, and what the status is of various police firearms. What further complicates this issue is that the SAP 13 evidence locker isn't subjected to that procedure, because that's a whole different register altogether. and the fact that criminals have started targeting police stations to rob them of guns and ammunition. I mean, we saw about 5 or 6 highly publicized such incidents in 2021 alone, where the cops are being robbed in their police stations. So there is a massive problem. Every time Bheki Cele opens his mouth to talk about stricter gun control, what people who, well, not that there are many, there's a small minority of South Africans that actually support civilian disarmament. What they refuse to acknowledge is that the same people who will then go to confiscate civilian guns are the people who are leaking them to criminals right now, meaning all that they're asking for is an indirect transfer of ownership from, we're going to take guns from civilians, the cops are going to, the police will confiscate them, and then corrupt policemen and women will sell them to criminals. So we'll just arm the gangsters via this mechanism, the special purpose vehicle. And that's not a conversation we're really having.
Yo, Gideon. Wow, I'm genuinely speechless, because on the one hand, I know that somewhere out there is a hardened, violent, and murderous criminal who's literally cleaning a firearm of this nature that's been stolen from police hands, and in his mind is murderous intent in the commissioning of the various crimes that he or she wants to commit, of course, whether, as you said, it's a cash in transit or it's a zama, an illegal minor, for those who aren't aware of what a zama is. And the bullets that he is chambering into that rifle or into that firearm could literally land up hitting one of us, the innocent bystanders, the law-abiding citizens in this country, who carry the burden of having to abide to laws that are ever increasingly, Gideon, designed to disempower us at the expense of our own safety, our own freedoms, and our own rights. That is the bottom line of what we're discussing here today. That is the meat and potatoes of what we're discussing here today. So that, for example, the penultimate section I want us to chew on before the last section is really this. I then have to pivot to the attempts by the state, Gideon, to disarm South Africans, and at the very least make it even more difficult for those same South Africans to defend themselves. Can you give us a refresher, please, as to what proposed legislation the Minister of Police and really the South African government has put in place, the implications of it, and really the work you've been doing to push back? And where we'll end tonight is, once you've told us what you've been doing to push back, is actually from there, once we win that battle, going forward, how we rewrite and reform self-defense legislation in this country to make it pro-citizen.
So with regards to the pushback, there are a great number of independent organizations across the board pushing back very effectively. And we have a stronger, broader, more diverse front now, I think, than we've ever had in this fight in its history. I mean, you have gun-owning organizations like Gun Owners of South Africa, the South African Gun Owners Association, which are two separate and independent organizations. You have Safe Citizen, there are many sort of firearm-focused specific organizations. Then you have AfriForum, the Institute of Race Relations. You had the Free Market Foundation. We had the Center for Risk Analysis. We had the Free Market Foundation come on board. We had a whole bunch of other, agricultural unions come on board. And I think we had taxi associations come on board as well, because it's a very, very broad issue. And a great number of my new clients are from townships, specifically Khayelitsha, as well as the township just outside Strand, the name of which escapes me now. But you see these people who are in the lower income bracket, who have no policing whatsoever in their communities. I mean, the Khayelitsha Commission ran over 7 years, and there's been no improvement in policing in Khayelitsha. The people there are worse off than they've ever been before. And they are spending an extraordinary amount of their disposable income to comply with the current legislation in order to become legally armed, because they are that desperate. They understand fully that they are the only thing that stands between them, their families, and violent criminals trying to prey on them. And what has been proposed over the past 10 years is the government has been pushing harder and harder for total civilian disarmament. And they tried putting the crowbar in since 2015 by trying to outlaw self-defense as a reason to own a gun and use a gun. And they have failed twice in a row on that, because civil society as a whole rejected it overwhelmingly, to such a point that they had to go with their tail between their legs back to the portfolio committee and take that entire piece of proposed legislation and put it, deprioritize it was the official term. I don't know unofficially what that means, but it tells me that the seat was too hot and they had to give it up. And it's something that never made sense to me. The ANC voting base doesn't want this. The opposition voting base doesn't want this. About 3%, if I can, out of a sample size of 200,000 people, indicated it's something that they support. And that's a significantly large sample. So if we say 3% of the public are pro firearm prohibition, it's not a battle the government can win. You know, it's costly. So we're at that stage in the fight. We've pushed this back. We will continue to push it back, but we need meaningful reform. And that's an urgent thing that is quite desperate.
Absolutely, which brings us, therefore, again to the last area, that I want us to really chew on, because Gideon, we're going to be waging this battle of ideas, well into this year. This won't be the last episode that you and I do, and indeed there'll be some events that you and I will we've kind of had this conversation in a very cursory way. So something's coming. I'm cooking something up in this regard, but. And with that being said, shout out to those organizations that you were mentioning earlier, such as Gun Owners South Africa, Paul Oxley, I see you, homie, the IRR and AfriForum, doing fantastic work in that regard. So stuff is coming, guys, stuff is coming. But again, before I even say stuff is coming, this is about the citizen. This is about that chap who's watching this show who maybe isn't a firearms owner, such as I am, right? Legally, I'm not a firearms owner in this country, and I'm working on that. Shout out to IHAU Training Center here in Pinetown, who are facilitating that process with me. But talk to me about that South African number one, the imperative, the need for more South Africans, to become their own self-defenders and train and apply for a firearm. Number one. Number two, the fight itself. Talk to me about the future of what you guys will be looking to do to reform legislation and make it pro-citizen and pro-self-defense.
So with regards to the average person, and someone mentioned the July riots in the comments section, and that was a great practical example of what I'm about to talk about. It's the fact that you are, as an individual, always the first responder to your personal emergency, whether it's a criminal emergency, a medical emergency, it doesn't matter. You are always going to be the first person on that scene. There is no time travel technology or Star Trek beam tech that's going to get anyone on that scene before you. It's physically impossible. And your abilities at that point in time, pertaining to your mindset, your attitude towards the situation, your knowledge and skills, as well as the tools you bring to bear in order to address it, can literally mean the difference between life and death, especially when you look at the fact that most violent encounters last seconds and minutes rather than hours. Okay, it's over usually very, very quickly. It's decided very, very quickly. I have a mantra that I want to put on a bumper sticker, and it's mindset leads, training feeds, and everything else follows. And what that means is that if you already have the correct attitude pertaining to, you understand this problem in society exists. It's called the problem of crime, the problem of violence. You do not want to be a victim. So you're going out there with the intent of equipping yourself as best as you possibly can to deal with such a situation should you encounter it in your daily life, or should it find you. If you cannot evade it or avoid it, how to counter it at the very least. Training then feeds into that. So your mindset is a product of many things, but it's also a product of your confidence and how you feel about being able to actively address this problem of a violent confrontation. And one way of doing that is to become adequately trained to deal with it with regards to your skill set, whether it's unarmed skills, armed skills, it doesn't matter. Okay, it's a mindset, attitude thing. And your equipment that you bring to play, whether it's guns, whether it's knives, whether it's pepper spray, it doesn't matter. Those are then supplementary. And this is the thing, a great mistake some people might make is they think, okay, but they have a gun, therefore, they're now good to go. It's like, well, the gun is merely a tool. The gun can only supplement what you are already capable of. You are, and without trying to sound overly melodramatic or too much like a Jedi here, your mind is the weapon. You are the weapon. The tool, the physical tool, is an extension of you. And that is something I focus on in my training courses, and a great many of the superb, I think, international quality instructors, of which a great many in this country do. It is to equip ordinary people with the ability to save their own lives in a violent encounter. And that is something I'm seeing a great many people, first timers, take up and take very seriously, especially since July. But I think it's also there has been an awakening pertaining to government failure over the past 2 to 3 years anyway. July was just the July riots were just a highlighter over that existing issue.
Absolutely. And, Gideon, as I close, I must say this, once I am a legal firearms owner and I've settled the debate as to what sidearm I'll be carrying, man, you'll definitely see me at your many training courses. And indeed, I might even put that information in the descriptor of this video after this broadcast. Gideon, final word. How do the folks get in touch with you? How do they find your content? And what are you working on?
So you can find me at Paratus, at Paratus 2014 on Twitter. I'm very controversial and outspoken, a bit of a doers, so like fair warning. But website, paratus.info. And if you need to get a hold of me via email, like if you're interested in the training course, I've got one running in Cape Town on the 26th of Feb, and I've got one running in Gauteng, in Pretoria side, on I think it's the 6th of March, over 2 days. You can get me at Gideon, which is on screen there, Gideon, at CHS Guns, Charlie Hotel Sierra Guns, chsguns.coza. And that's my jam. And final word, by the way, where the fight's going, I forgot to add that. License the person, register the firearm, treat it like a vehicle license or driver's license. You are the license holder. Your cars or your guns are registered to your name on a biometrically secured online database. And if you're going to get really geek about it, it can be on the blockchain. It can be secured in all sorts of ways. That is the way this needs to go. It needs to be decentralized. It needs to be made more efficient. And government bureaucracy and arbitrary application need to be removed from it. And that's a big fight, and I've written a lot about it. But you can find all that stuff on my website. And if you want me to speak to Cele about that, harass him to death so we can do another show follow-up on exactly how to fix the CFR, because that's like an hour topic on its own.
Absolutely. That, of course, is Gideon Joubert from Paratus.info. Massive thanks to him. And, of course, a big thank you to you, dear viewer of the BDL show. We're back in 2022, much to the anger and the unhappiness of the AssHat, the squirrel, and Buffalo Bill. We are back. We're going to be harassing those politicians this year as we remind them, hashtag, that politicians are trash and that we will fight for our freedoms, our liberty, and our rights. That is the Liberty way. Guys, thank you for watching the show. Reminder, please, that I'll see you again on Sunday at 8 p.m. for Liberty and Friends as we wrap up the news week that will be. At that stage, make sure you catch us then. I have quite a lot of vlogs that I've done today. Please make sure you check them out. Vlogs 1 to 6 127 and 128, if I'm not mistaken, are on my channel. Have a look at those, as you'll see how organizations like Sakelecha, the IRR, etc., are fighting back against the lockdown and the spicy cough grift. Make sure that you catch that. It's on my channel, whether you watch it on Twitter, YouTube, or Facebook. With that being said, thank you so much for watching. If you want to support the channel, especially as we move towards more content and a studio, please God, that we're trying to fundraise for, all of that information is in the descriptor of the video. How about you contribute $50 a month? I'd really appreciate that. It goes a long way to funding the work that we do. So with that being said, muchas gracias. I'll see you guys on Sunday. And until then, never trust a commie.